So, welcome everyone to Office Hours. It is so lovely to have you here with us today. Um, we really appreciate you spending the time with us. If you've joined us for any of these before, you'll know that this is just a great opportunity for us to go deep on different features and things like that. Today, we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into site specifically, and we're going to be talking about how to build responsibly and respond, you know, responsively inside of
Responsive
Figma sites.
responsibly.
Yeah, exactly. Responsible responsiveness in Figma sites. And I am thrilled to announce that joining me today is Christine Valeur, who is a founder of Moon Learning. Christine, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So hi, I'm Christine, and I run an online learning platform about design, Figma, and code. So it's very much about getting designers into the building. So I'm very, very excited about the new developments with Figma sites and Make, and I've been playing around a lot of it, made a course of it, and some templates, which I'm also going to show you. And I was at Config speaking this year also about building as a designer. So really, really happy about those features, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun today. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. This session will be recorded. If for any reason you have to leave or you want to come back and watch it later, or you want to slow me down, I talk really fast, you will have a recording of that emailed to you as long as you registered. Please use the Q&A button for questions. It's lovely to get questions in the chat, but sometimes the chat moves really fast and we miss them. So if you have questions you want answered, please use the Q&A button in the Zoom chat. Sorry, in the Zoom interface. And then in the chat, make sure you have your settings set to everyone. We love getting personal messages, but generally speaking, let's keep the chat open so we can all interact with each other. And on that note, please be kind. We always say it, we've got a code of conduct. You can read up on it if you want to, but just be kind. Great. And so with that, we are going to get started on building responsively in Figma sites. And I'm going to actually pass things off to Christine right now to kick us off, and we'll talk a bit about responsiveness and some of the basics in Figma. So here we
Okay,
go.
great. I'm just going to share my screen with you. You see everything, Anthony? In case you don't see anything I'm sharing, please let me know.
Looks
Okay, so
great.
I'm gonna start with the first part. So first of all, we want to give you some intro to the basics. So we want you to get building with blocks. So we want to show you responsive breakpoints and then show you how the pre-made Figma blocks, how you can really, really quickly build responsive websites with them and how you can link responsive pages. So let's have a look. What you usually see, like down here, this is if you press that button, you're getting new pages. Usually you see something like this. If you click on a little plus button up here, then you can see there is more. So I would recommend that you have desktop, tablet, and mobile enabled so you have the most control. Now, if you go on the left-hand side, you see this little plus button. If you click on here, you can see the pre-made Figma blocks. There is entire pages. I quite like using these separate blocks. So what you can do is you have, for example, navigation, and then you can simply drag that navigation over here. You only need to drop it on the one that says primary. Anthony's going to explain something about that in a minute. And so you can drop your page together. So let me have another one. There's one I really like in Heroes, this one. We drag that one on there. And then let's actually from features, let's get a little bit of text as well. And so you can see that this is like sort of pre-set up for you. So it adapts really well. And if I want to preview this, I can just click this button either over here, or you have another preview button on the top right hand corner. So if you click that, you get a preview. You can see there's some built-in animations with this block, and then you can see the different sizes. So that works really well, and everything is already set up for you. You can customize that to your liking. So you only need to click on your primary one, and then you can change anything. So you can say this is my portfolio, and you can also alter elements. So one thing that I want to point out is that this is my primary one. If I get rid of the buttons here, then you can see that this is going to get rid everywhere. Now I can also choose, maybe I just don't want the buttons on this one, and have a look here over here in my layers. So if I get rid of this, then you can see that in this case, it only hides it. So if it's not your primary one, it hides it. I just want to get rid of all of them. And so I have this. Now I prepared some images down here. Just drag them up. And so what you can also do, you can simply select images, and I'm using my favorite shortcut, which is Shift, Command, and C. That copies a PNG to your clipboard, and you can just paste it. And again, I only paste that into my main one, and then this is gonna just really nicely pick up everywhere. By the way, these images are from Lumi, which is a lovely plugin that you can access in Figma Design. And then again, we can just preview this, and then you can see that this is going to just translate it to all of your breakpoints. So super, super simple. Now, if we
Awesome.
want to
And I might
connect
step
that.
in for a second if
Oh
I
yeah,
can, just
sorry,
to
yeah,
mention about the. No,
the
no, no, that's
primary
all great.
one.
I'm actually
This
going
one,
to
yeah.
replace the current screen share right now so I can take over and just give a quick explanation of some of the stuff that Christine was showing there too as well, right? So we walked through a number of pieces there, right? Creating a new web page, and then setting up these different sizes, right? And just to sort of set the stage for everybody, like this is where we get the concept of responsive design from, right? The idea is that we want our site to respond to different sizes. Now, there are elements of this that can be done pretty easily. In fact, you're just using a single screen size. There are some clever tricks we can use with auto layout and things like that that we're going to look at in just a little bit. But there are other things where that's just not going to cut it, right? There are certain ways that we maybe want our page to change based on different properties, such as maybe even removing content entirely. You sometimes might hear this called adaptive design. A little less common of a term, but the important thing to note there is that, if you could imagine that like you're using your website on your desktop environment, you're using your website on your mobile device, the actions you want to perform and the information that's going to be most relevant to you is probably going to be different, right? If I'm on the go and I'm on the bus and there are some things that I want to see quickly, I may want to reorder or reprioritize that content and change the information architecture in such a way that my mobile device is showing me exactly what I want someone to need while they're, trying to run and sit, either they're sitting on the bus or they're walking down the street or they're doing something like that. Whereas for the desktop experience, that might be my opportunity to know that they're probably sitting down somewhere. They maybe have a bit more time, a bit more content that they can go through. And that's really why we try to create these different experiences or adjust these experiences for those different modes, right? Those different modalities, not Figma modes, just modalities of how people are going to be working, right? So the other thing I just want to call out too, with that image copy and pasting that you're doing there, that will generate a PNG. By default, those will be 2x. So those will be twice the size of what you were copying from, unless you change the export properties on that image. If you actually set your own custom export properties, if you do that copy paste trick again, where you're actually like copying a PNG right away, then it will use whatever export settings that you had said. Cool. Okay, back to Christine.
Oh, actually, Anthony, you showed me this really cool thing with the primary,
Yeah,
which I didn't know. Do you want to point that out? I'm not sure. I think you're still on sharing.
yeah,
That you
yeah.
can
So we
change your
have
primary.
exactly, yeah. So back to the breakpoints for a second here too as well. With our primary breakpoint, that word primary appears on whichever breakpoint is going to be the one that controls all of the content across all of your different breakpoint frames that we have inside of this. So when I say breakpoint frame, I just mean the top level frame that has the name of the frame, the name of the breakpoint, as well as the widths at which that particular frame will get applied. By default, the desktop is going to be the primary, meaning that that's the one where you can kind of make your bigger changes that you want to cascade across your different views, and then you modify the other ones with the smaller changes that you might want to have. You can, if you prefer, you can set the primary breakpoint to, say, the mobile screen, for instance, if you want to do more of a mobile first approach to how you're designing. You're thinking about your content from your smallest screen size upward in that sense as well. You could do your tablet, kind of an interesting take right there. I don't know. I don't know anyone who does it that way, but you can certainly always set your primary to the one that you want to make sure that you're using as the one that controls the other breakpoints as well.
Okay,
Cool.
great. I'm gonna take that share over again. We're on my screen again, right? Perfect. And
Looks
I'm,
good.
I'm not sure if you saw that. I think Anthony, if that was visible, like Anthony, you clicked on the right to have that breakpoint. I'm not sure
I
if you
did
had
right click
seen.
there, yeah, for that little
Yeah,
menu.
just someone didn't. So if you then have it set up, here I have one down here. You can see I changed the logo. You can change everything to your liking, add some text. So if you want to connect this, then you can do that just as you do in Figma Design. Just jump to your interactions, and you don't need to connect every little screen. You can just grab one. And now let's say we want to connect this one, and I'm just going to drag this over here. And then I'm going to say, oops, look, I have a few more here. Sorry, I practiced and apparently connected it. So we should have this one now on click. That's nice when it's in a demo. Let's try it again. Apparently not, but trust me, it is working in real life. So what you can do then, you can see here I connected some others, so you can connect the logo back and everything. So you can see here, for example, it's fully responsive and it's going to know when you jump which size to jump back to. And it's jumping also back to our main screen. So this is just working as you used it before. Is there anything I forgot
Mhm.
about that, Anthony, before we move
Yeah,
on to
I'm
the
gonna actually show a
components?
couple of details there too as well. And I saw it coming through saying things are a little bit fast paced. Don't worry, you will have the recording for this as well. If you're looking for an introduction to Figma sites where we go through the actual real basics, if you've never used Figma, we have a live stream recording from about a month ago available on our YouTube channel. Also worth checking out as well. We are going to mainly focus on like responsive design inside of Figma sites today. So if you're looking for that sort of wider array of brand new, 101 topics and things like that, I would definitely check out that video too as well. Yeah, so the last thing that I wanted to mention here was, Christine, as you were working down here on these layouts down here, there are some really cool things that we can do to get the same elements selected across all of three. Now, as we showed before, when you're selecting things in the primary view, you're going to see, and it might be harder to zoom, but you can see there's a slight light blue dotted outline around this element because Figma understands that these two are the same element, right? When we introduce new breakpoints, we don't want to triple, in this case, the amount of work that we need to be doing by editing each thing every time. And so this gives us a simple way for me to go in here and edit all three across all three of those breakpoints at once, right? This is because of something we call select matching layers. Now, if we want to disable this, we always can. If you turn off select matching layers, it will no longer use that same linking behavior to edit all three at once. There might be scenarios where this could be useful depending on what it is that you're trying to do. Maybe you're trying to copy somewhere else and you don't want to copy all your different breakpoint versions. You just want to copy a single one. So that's a really useful tool and kind of gives you that granularity to decide, am I selecting one thing? Am I selecting multiple things? Just a really helpful technique. And yeah, so this is great. I mean, this is good for the basics as far as if you're going to start from blocks, right? But what if I'm not working with blocks and I want to actually build my own layouts from scratch, or I have a design file in Figma Design that I was working from before? Christine, what would I do? Show us what we do there.
I gotta take over again. Let me show you. And this was really fun because actually Anthony was talking us through and we noticed that we do it a different way. So we're going to show you both ways in which we're working, and then you can also pick the one that suits your project and workflow. So I want to talk a little bit about doing this custom because so far, for those who came late, we were working with the pre-made Figma blocks. They're available to everybody using sites. Just click on a plus button and you have your blocks. And you can see they were set up really easily and nicely for you. Now, if you want to set up your own, you have to do a little more work, but you also have all the creativity. It's yours. So we want to talk about custom responsive blocks. So you can set up your own. I want to show you some auto layout settings you have to be aware of. And we want to turn this into component sets so you can reuse those versions, and also a little bit about variables and modes to keep your consistency. So you can see here, I have this design and I want to use that across all my breakpoints. So what I can do, so one way of doing this, I just add it in here. And you can see if I add it in my primary and then it's already in there. But now these ones, they don't automatically have auto layout set. So what we need to do, we need to add some auto layout. Here's a little overview. So you need to do three things. So you need to add a vertical auto layout to your page. You need to set it to hug so that it shows you all the content. And then you need to set your block to filter container. If that sounds a bit abstract, don't worry, we're going to just go through it bit by bit. So I select my primary one here, and then I'm just over here. Actually, can I make this a little, oops, sorry,
Yes,
little
Command
large?
Option Shift
Yeah,
plus.
let's do
Yeah,
this
you
so you
got it.
can see this a bit better.
A good tip for everybody as
Um,
well. If you want to increase the size of your UI, Command or Control, Option or Alt Shift plus, depending on if you're on a Mac or
And I want
PC.
to say thank you for Roger who showed me this one. I didn't know for years. And so you select this and then you just turn this into a vertical auto layout, and then make sure sometimes it adds some padding. Just make sure that you have everything here on the main one set to 0. So I select that parent frame. And now what I do, I can just adjust this all on here the way I like it. and then I can start designing. So you can see, for example, this one looks great. So this one looks pretty fine because you have to consider that this goes from 800, so this is the smallest size, up to this size. So that looks pretty fine, but this one obviously doesn't. And you can really make all the changes. So I'm just going to flip to auto layout. Notice I'm not selecting the parent frame. I'm selecting my element and I'm flipping it over. I might want to change the padding a little bit, and you can really change those designs completely to your liking. So whatever you need for that breakpoint in order to work. Now, if I just press play, let me see if it does it. It looks fine on my static one, but notice how it looks all right, but somehow it doesn't really pick up. So you have to be aware this one here, you need to set your block, so your self-made block to fill the container. So just select the one on the main one and always make sure that you set this to fill the container, and it's now going to really nicely behave with your container. So you can see now this is working really well, so really smooth. Now,
There's also a great trick you can do there too with max width as well. If you wanted to, you could set a max
yeah.
width on that block, set your parent auto layout to center, and then you're going to, yeah. So if we set a max width there of say like 980, if you want to just grab that real quick. Oh, sorry, max width, not a min width.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Let's get this
all
one.
good.
Add a max width of
Yeah,
900.
do like 980, and then on the parent breakpoint frame, make sure to center that. Yeah, great. And then if you test that on the largest size and you go real
Nice. So
wide,
then
you'll
it
see you
stays
get
very
that nice
center.
fixed size and the centering on it, which is really helpful
So,
sometimes.
so this is really helpful, I think, if you are like if you're working if you don't want your text to get too large, right? I sometimes make
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
make a
If you've got
mess.
line lengths that are becoming where scannability is becoming hard because you've got over those magic numbers of where the human eye can pick up the next line can
Yeah.
be really helpful.
So if I now want to reuse this one, then what I can do, and notice I just select the block on the main parent, and I'm just going to pull out, sorry, I'm just going to pull out a copy. And notice how it already copies all of them for me. Because all I need to do now is I'm going to select all of them. And this is basically how the blocks that we used before, the pre-made ones, are set up. You just don't see that setup. So you're setting up your own. And now I don't turn them into single component, but I'm going to turn them into component set with variants. So I'm going to do this. Let me just make this line a little larger
Yeah.
so you
For the
can
comment
see
earlier where
it.
someone said, "Hey, this seems a little bit like components," you are absolutely correct because we are
Absolutely.
using component technology here inside of Figma sites.
And now you need to do one thing in order to pick it up. So you're getting your little error, which if you're used to working with component sets, you get, if you add more variants. And now you need to name them. And the important part is you really need to name them desktop, tablet, and mobile. So the breakpoints that we're given. So I'm going to call this one desktop. If I have a typo, let me know because then it doesn't work. Tablet. And we're going to
Good
call
so
this
far.
one mobile. Did I already do a typo? This one's fine, no?
No, no, that's great. No, you're good.
Oh,
I
great.
always misspell all of my components and I have to debug them when I go in there.
So you can also name the property, and here you can name it anything you want. I like naming it breakpoints or breakpoint or point. That really doesn't matter. The important part is that the variants are named correctly. And now, oops, we can just add take an instance. We're adding our instance here. Make sure that you remember to always set it to fill container. And now we're pressing play, and then you can see you have the identical copy, and this is how you can reuse this.
Yeah, so that one that you built on top was just done with layers, meaning if you tried to copy and paste that, you're gonna have to you might have to rebuild it if you only had one of them selected. Whereas with with
Yeah.
the component, when you paste the instance, it automatically applies those other sizes to the other breakpoints.
Exactly. So it's automatically
Yeah.
going to pick up anything you want, and you can make any changes here later on. So if you do changes, like if you want to flip around things, you can see. Oh, and this one, by the way, this is why I would always say set this to hug the content. So you see all your content, you can see that this will pick up. So just like you work with your components. Now, as I
And
said,
Shelly,
sorry,
oh,
yeah, go
real
ahead,
quick, Shelly, to
Anthony.
your question there, yeah, you can set your own breakpoint sizes and names as well. They don't have to be called desktop, mobile, tablet, and they can be set to custom sizes, as you see right there as well.
So this was the fun part when we started discussing this, Anthony. Maybe when we noticed that we do this a different way. So
We
this
do.
is if you're designing, and I think both of them are right. It also depends a bit what you're working on. So if you're working like on your own portfolio page, you probably want to have full control and try around and play around. If you're working on more of a design systemy thing or like sort of a set that you later want to share, then sometimes you want to start thinking in those components. So here I have the same thing with a different setup, and you can see I made some sort of a mold that I keep on using. So I have desktop, tablet, and mobile, and you can see them here. And why I like this is because I can like sort of try it out here. So I go, this is my desktop and this is my tablet, and especially for the mobile, because for the mobile, we have the size we use is 375, but we can go smaller, but we don't want to use that because this is this is a really small one. And then here we go large, and so we can try this, and then you would do your same and like just like changing the design. Now, another thing I want to show you, what I like doing is I like adding variables right away. If you're in that sort of systematic approach and you're more in a system, and you're going to like this one, this is very just a simplified version to show you this. So I like adding the screen sizes. This is not really necessary. And then here you would add all your spacing and things like padding. So what I am doing here is I am adding my left and right padding as an example. You can see I already did this with a variable. So let me just show you how to do that. You can see here, I just picked that up. And you can also add here, this is just for me that it's a little faster, the screen size, then later I have them organized nicely if I have more than one. And then I go down here, and then what I do is I use my mode switch. And then with my mode, let me just show you this one because I know this was a bit confusing if you're not used to modes. So I have 64, 32, 24. So for desktop, tablet, mobile. You could call it anything, but I recommend naming it after your breakpoints because otherwise it gets a bit confusing. And then here in appearance, I'm just going to change from desktop to tablet. And then here, I'm just going to change to mobile. So when I am now making my design decisions, I already have sort of the fixed things that I'm using in all of my components already set. If you're resizing, then notice it will kick out that size. So this size really just is for me to later just have it that everything is nice and clean. And then I
Yeah.
do exactly the same. Sorry, Anthony, I'm just going to finish that.
No, no,
And
this is
then
great.
and then we just create the components as you had before. It's the same workflow, desktop, mobile, tablet, and mobile. And so you have the same result. It's really just what you're working on and where you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and why I love this, I want to come back to this example for a little bit because there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. I'm going to take over screen share for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Okay. So, looking at first of all, I think that this is incredible, and it's great for designers to sort of see, I think, a little bit more of that behind the scenes, or like, what are the tools that you use to help you actually get your designs done, right? This feels like a very almost like a woodworking jig kind of a thing that you would use, right? Where you've got like your nice little your nice, or as you put it, a mold, right? So you've got some way to sort of see what's going on, and then this is in itself becomes a reusable resource that you can just copy into any file that you want to use. That way of resizing and seeing how things change. Really, really nice setup. And also, again, mentally, this might be how you want to approach it. It's sort of that opposite approach of how we did it before, where before we were designing right inside the breakpoints and then turning it into a component set. Whereas here, we're basically starting with the component set and then dragging it into our design later on. There was one good thing I just wanted to call out too that came through in the chat, which is just around, Jeremy had this great point around, if you have things that aren't changing between different sizes, um, you don't always need to have this level of complexity, right? Like if your design only consists of a single web page where auto layout is enough, right? Like if you have elements where all that's happening, I mean, this is a bad example because we saw when it got real small, it started to look wrong. But you could imagine if you had a scenario where on desktop it always looked like this, right? And then on mobile, I didn't want it to actually sort of adapt in any way. I just wanted it to stay the same. In those kinds of scenarios, a single component without variance is going to work just fine. You'd only need just like a normal component where I'm going to hit Option Command K. Actually, let me turn those on so y'all can see there. So if I hit Option Command K, turn that into a component, that instance is going to be enough, right? Because I don't have anything that's breaking or requiring me to change anything about its design that auto layout can't already handle. Whereas this is really valuable in this scenario because on our mobile, as we saw, there was a change to that layout and how things are getting organized as well. So just a little side note there
Yeah.
too as well.
Yeah, but really good point. Yeah. Okay, as I'm taking over again, I'm just going to show you one last little thing before I show you one of my favorite features in a second. So here you can see that with this one, so what we showed you, you can use everything that you know from Figma design. So you do need to know your auto layout, your components and everything. Um, and then you can also do things like you can have interactive components, you embed them. So the one that you pick up in the end is your larger set. So you get really nice stuff like this, where you can like sort of make components that open and close and they dynamically respond. But everything that you see here is based on everything, all the features that exist in Figma, and you just set them up in this way. And then you can really get a very new, powerful tool in Figma sites.
Yeah. And
Now,
to the question,
sorry, it's
Mateo,
you.
just real quick, just because as we're going through the chat, and I know if you've got, please put your questions in the Q&A, but there's some good comments kind of coming through in the chat. Just make sure that we capture some of those too as well. Mateo asked the question, like, is it only possible in sites or is this in normal files too as well? Back in Figma design, you can set up this similar structure, especially the way that Christine was showing with variables, right? So you could set up your variables, you can set up your modes, and then it's going to work just like the modes picker that you're going to see automatically. You're not going to have those breakpoint frames, right? But if you could set them up technically as like, this frame has this mode, this frame has this mode, this frame has this mode, and you get the same effect happening in Figma design as well. So.
Do you want to take those ones over
Cool. Oh
the
yeah, let
padding
me
and
do
the
this.
blocks?
Yes,
Yeah, that.
padding. This is a question I get all of the time, and so it's just one I wanted to sort of finally put on record, which is where do we put our padding, right? And this is an interesting one. It might be some contradictions for some folks who are heavy CSS users and approaches that you might do it over there, but I'm going to talk through where and why I place paddings in certain places inside of my components or my blocks in that sense, right? So let's pull out a couple examples here. So here you can see this has an about me. It's got a little bit of a transparency on it. In fact, I'm just going to bump that up so we don't have to just look at it normally right now. Okay, zoom in my way. There we go, 100%. And then I've got this other block here of interests and hobbies. And there's two types of padding that I want to talk about right now. It's like the first is let's talk about the left and right padding. Often, you might call this the margins, things like that. Inside of Figma, padding is what we have to work with. Now, if you work in CSS and HTML, you might be familiar with the box model and how we have the concepts of both paddings and margins. In our case here, we're going to think about margins as the padding on the parent container, right? So in that case, you can see here we've got or we're gonna try and use paddings in that manner since we don't have a full like margins capability inside of Figma sites right now. So the reason you can see here these side paddings that we have, you'll notice they're on the blocks themselves. You can kind of see that happening right here, right? And the reason for that is because the alternative would be to like put it on the entire page. But if I have places where I want to say break up my design with a full width element that actually spans to the edges, this is going to make it a lot easier for me to do it, right? So for example, let's say I have a nice big image that I was going to add, make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to place it between these blocks here, right? And I want to set that to still the width of the container, right? I don't have to try and find a way to undo the margins because here's a version of this exact same thing where the padding is actually set on the breakpoint frame itself. And you'll see here, if I try to add my nice full width image, right, and I put this inside of our blocks, I'm now holding down the control key to do a deep sort of nesting behavior, which will give me a little bit more access to where I want to place this thing exactly. Kind of, almost got it right. But you can see that, in order for me to reverse this, now there are ways to do it. You could do actual negative constraints to set it there. It's a little complicated. The fill width is just so much easier. And then the blocks are also a little bit more self-contained. They sort of stand up on their own. And it also means you can set their paddings independently if you have certain areas where maybe you are breaking your standard grid a little bit, or your grid has a lot more columns and you want to do interesting things with how those paddings interact with each other. It just makes it a lot easier to do it this way as well. Next piece I'm going to talk about is the other paddings on the other sides, the top and bottom. Sometimes you'll hear this called vertical rhythm, right? And this is the concept of how we want the cadence, the pace of our content to actually happen, right? Like how close are things next to each other? How quickly, you know, in my brain, am I reading this as one long thing, or should it be one long, like one run-on sentence, or should it feel like two different concepts broken up with each other? We often do that visually with how far apart we space things, how much white space there is, right? And how much we let things breathe, or how much we actually want to cram in more information, because maybe that's the goal, right? And so similarly, there's two main techniques here that I've seen done. And I'm still in I'm torn between them at the moment, but I think they both work pretty well. One is that you always apply paddings to the top and bottom. This guarantees that you're going to have some sort of padding next to the item that it's going to be next to. This is an alternative approach where you're only applying paddings to the top, but every single block has its own top padding. This is a little bit more of a traditional, I would say, typesetting style to this concept. It can work. It ensures that your paddings don't double up on you. CSS actually takes care of this for you automatically under the hood in some cool ways. But in the case of Figma, you might find yourself going, oh, that's a lot of padding on both of those examples. So there, you can take an approach where you just put the padding on one side, so you guaranteed to know what that distance is going to be. Now, this works well if you have a very modular system, if you're building components that are meant to be moved around and put in different places all the time. But it can also be kind of confusing for somebody if they come in and they see this and they try to add, an image right below this, and there's no padding between the elements, right? So if you're doing something like this, just you got to make sure that consistency is key, and also that you have an understanding of why it's done this way. Whereas this is a little bit more safe, I would say, as far as like where we're putting paddings to make sure that this element just acts like its own block in that sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it's also nice because you can use variables now, which is lovely.
Yes, yeah, and the variables just make it a lot easier. We don't have to do any of that complexity. So, just a good thing to keep in mind. Because and whether or not you choose to use it, it's good to know why. If you look at someone else's file, it might be set up one way or another. So,
So you can see my file, right? So I'm back at screen share.
yes.
I hope I am. And I'm going to show you my favorite part, which I became slightly obsessed with. So I'm going to show you a library I made and how you can connect your own library. Someone also asked that in the chat, how you can create libraries in Figma Design so you can use them in Figma Design, but in sites. And it's really, really cool. The library I'm going to show you, it's pretty big. I worked a long time on it. So you can get a free copy on Moonblocks. It's moonblocks.io. Or there's also a link via Moon Learning. It's completely free. Just go for the library and then you should find something like this, and then you can download a free file that should look similar to this. So this is really great because just as you used libraries before, you can set them up in Figma Design and then pull them into sites. So I'm first going to show you the library which I made. So you can see here, this is a library with different blocks, and they're set up in the way which we already talked through. So I'm having these different breakpoints and their component sets. And note how I have pages here. So one is called building blocks, wireframes, designs. So I also have different designs, wireframes. You can set up whatever you want. And then over here, I have just the blocks like the Figma blocks, but my own blocks. And then what you're probably interested in is our beloved variables. How can I use them? And it is just the way you always use them. So here, for example, we have our colors. So I have my colors, which I already used before, light and dark mode. So I have text colors, brand, neutrals. And again, everybody has a different setup for their system. So you can make this completely your own and you can use what worked for you before. And then I'm just using them across all of this. So I can quickly change that. So if you download that library, you can just change the variables to your own brand. And now the part you're probably very interested in is what's happening with the typography. So you can see that sometimes you want to change the typography. And so I'm going over that quickly. If you're very new to typography with styles and variables, this might be a bit overwhelming. Just get the file and you can poke around a bit and play with it and explore this. For those of you working with design systems, this will be quite clear. So you can see that here we have, this is my different styles. This is just an overview I make. You don't need to have this, but I find it quite nice to have an overview. And then you can see that I saved each of the styles over here. And you don't have to combine it with variables, but if you're into a more systematic approach, you'll probably love using those. So you can see here I have my typography, and again, I'm using modes, desktop, tablet, and mobile. Very cool is also that you can add your font here. So this is a string. You can have your font, so you can simply just jump in here and then you could change this to the font. So you can change this to Inter or whatever you want to use. And then here you can see I just have different sizes that I can play around with. And then what I do is pretty much what I already showed you, but we're just using more modes. So you can see this one here. For example, that it's down here. I just have two modes. You can set as many modes as you want. You could also have one file with everything. I like keeping spacing and typography apart. Completely up to you. And you can see I have a little switch, tablet and mobile, and then here I have a little switch. And for example, if I go to desktop, then you can see it would give me the different typography. So you have to do a little bit of switching around, but then everything is quite neat. And if you make a change later, then it's quite handy. Also note, I'm using component properties here. So you can see here are some component properties. I'm going to show you in a minute what this is. Again, if you're just starting with Figma, this component properties variable, all that a bit overwhelming. If you're deep into your design system, then that will make a lot of sense. Now, so you have all of your library set up, and then you can just jump into your sites page. You could use this in Figma Design and set up your pages. This is what I did here. Set up my wireframe, my pages, just to your liking. But you can also use it here and then build your page. So you jump to the plus button where you had blocks, and right next to it you find libraries. And then you have a little library button. I already connected this. It's super easy. Just click on the library button, search for the library you created, and then you simply connect it. Sorry, I think I didn't say, like, if you want to publish, you click on here and you publish that library. So I made some changes, which I can later publish, and that will also be just picked up here right away. Now you can see, because I have my different pages, I have building blocks, designs, and my wireframes. I go in my building blocks, and because I have these sections here, I place everything on sections. This organizes it nicely, so I can go in here, and then just with the blocks that you already saw, I'm just going to drag this over. And the only difference to the native Figma blocks is that I need to set up, what, like we showed you before, I need to make sure that this is set up with the auto layout settings. So hero, let's pull over a little hero as well to show you. And now you can see I have to hit enter and to fill the container. So remember, that's the thing. You need to set the vertical, and then you just need to set this to fill the container. And so it works exactly the same. And because I have my component properties, I can even set this up so I can tell people what they can customize. So for example,
I
oops, they
love this.
probably
This is
don't want the
great.
logo. And this usually what this is really in the demo, because I tested this a minute ago and it works. I swear. And so you can literally just switch off like sort of the logo and the subline. Trust me, it does work. And so now we're having this here, and you can see here, one of them isn't set to fill the container. A bit stubborn today. I hit enter, by the way. This picks up all the child elements. But today it's not with me. It doesn't want a demo. It does work nicely. You do need to trust me and watch
The
my
demo
online
gods
video
were on our
about
side
it.
for most of
The
it today, so
demos
that's all
again,
we can hope for.
but it is working. You have to trust
Yeah.
my word. So I'm
Mhm.
super excited about this. Thank you so much for this feature, because I think it's really cool. So you can build this and then you can just give it to people to consume your library, which is pretty exciting.
That's great. Awesome. Okay. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Well, we're going to stay on the responsive side of things, but we're going to look at a few more different ways that we can do responsiveness with other types of components, other types of things that we have inside of Figma sites. So let's hop over. I'm going to share a screen, and we are going to take a look at, if that works. There we go. Great. We're going to take a look at some of the stuff that we can do with preset interactions and things just to be aware of when using this kind of stuff inside of Figma sites. So preset interactions, what are these? As a quick reminder, Figma Sites has a little bit different approach to interactivity than Figma Design. So in Figma Design, if we were going to make things interactive, we can either use a generic prototype connection from one frame to another. You can actually do that here in Sites too, but in Figma Design, we also have the concept of interactive components. If you don't know what those are, go and check them out. They're very cool. It makes using things like variants very cool, because you can essentially turn the variants into the start and end or middle positions of a particular animation you're trying to do, or a micro interaction or something like that. So it's really powerful stuff. Um, those do actually work in Figma sites too as well, but we also have things that are a little bit more designed for the web, and they can take advantage of some of the properties of the web that we may not have in Figma design, where prototyping is pretty open-ended, right? Like you might be building a prototype for a medical device or a car dashboard or an airline kiosk or something like that, right? Where we don't necessarily have as much anticipation of what the final output's going to be. But since we know we're designing for the web here, our presets can actually take advantage of some of that behavior. So this is where things like, if we go into the interactions panel, under interactions, you're going to see that there's a list of lots of different interactions that we have. There are some good ones that we can add real easily, things like scrolling parallax effects and scrolling transforms. You'll see that these images here actually have a marquee applied to them, right? So that it's going to scroll them constantly to the left infinitely. Or maybe we want the text here to have a fun typewriter effect, right? Where we can actually say, yeah, I want this to actually look like a typewriter. There are all kinds of fun interactions that you can do, and they will work responsively as well. You just need to make sure that your frames are set up appropriately, right? And just make sure that you've got those auto layout containers where you need them, right? So in this case, the text is set to fill. So there's a container for both lines of text so that they stack vertically, and that's also set to fill. That's inside of this larger block that we have here, also set to fill. And then finally, the outer frame is where our size actually comes into play, our actual 1280 pixels that we're using here. Could be 1440, it could be whatever size that you want to be using. But you might find scenarios where certain interactions will need some adjustment. This one's actually pretty straightforward. So I will say, like, the marquee kind of just works out of the box, but you might find with some of the other interaction types that, like, for example, your scroll effect, like let's say we have a parallax effect. In fact, I'm going to put a parallax on this. It's going to look a little funny, but it should work. Let's say scroll parallax effect. Let's do something a little obvious. 150, 153%, very exact number. You see how, like, that's the parallax effect right there, right? How the images are just basically scrolling faster than the page behind it. You can do some really cool effects with this kind of stuff. You may discover, though, that when you go and look at that on mobile, that effect is, maybe too intense. Like maybe it's not doing what you want, or maybe the metrics seem off a little bit, or you want to maybe change the effect on mobile a little bit. That's where you might want to go in and actually adjust those parallax effects just for the specific, those interactions just for the specific view, right? So it's basically what we were talking about before. But instead of editing sort of how layouts will appear, we're editing how those effects are going to work. But you have that same capability. You can still go in and change them either all at once or individually for the different screens. By the way, once you've changed one individually, it's no longer going to listen to the main one. It's kind of like an override in that sense, right? So if you've made an adjustment, the main breakpoint isn't going to try and always, destroy that change that you made. It will preserve that, and it'll just change anything that hadn't had its properties overridden. So cool. Always be hydrating. Um, Next thing I want to talk about is some stuff with code components, and just a little bit around responsiveness with code components. Again, this is not going to be a full code components demo. We have that. We did a bunch in the last live stream. Definitely check it out. The thing to check out here is we're going to talk a little bit about, like, how you can make these things responsive. And there's two main ways to make code components, right? One is to actually start from a code layer. So I basically just clicked on the code layer tool. It's now giving me this, sort of generic, hey, you want to make a code layer. If you haven't played with this, it's real cool. It's basically like Figma Make. In fact, it is Figma Make inside of sites. So it gives you this area where you can do these little prompting experiences for code right inside your file here. You can also write the code directly if you, basically we're using a flavor of React back here. So if you actually want to go and grab packages, you can do that. You can do all that kind of stuff if you know development. But more importantly, I can come in and I can just start typing and describing what I'm trying to build here. Now, in this case, let's do I'm just going to do a very simple one. Yeah, sure. Let's do a digital clock. Great. Give me a digital clock. That's going to go ahead and build an example. But the thing to note is that since I started from this code layer, the code layer itself doesn't actually have any properties, right? It's going to act just like a rectangle at that point, right? So it's going to basically, if you're building anything else, I'm going to let that cook for a little bit. We'll come back to that later. But basically, like you'll need to apply your properties, right? Like you'll need to apply fill, container, you'll need to apply hub, all of that kind of stuff for your page. Maybe here's a better way to show that example, right? Which is where the other way to build a code layer is to start from an existing piece of design. So in this case, I think I want to animate these numbers. I want them to like just basically count upwards, right? I want it to be like kind of like when the page loads or when I get to this part of the page, I want it to just like sort of count those numbers upward. This is just text though, right? Now I could try and get real clever with interactions in here. I've tried it. It's actually not that easy to do. You can make them appear, but then to actually make them count upward is it's not a lot of code, but it's certainly something that is hard for me to want to animate with variables and setting counters and all these other counters that are going to like tick off and go upward. And so what you could do instead is this is where code layers. If you select any design, any frame, so like any frame here, and you can actually say make code from design. What this is going to do is it's going to read your design layers and it's going to turn those into a code output of that, right? So now if I wanted to basically say, uh, here, if I want to say, like count upward from 0, or make the numbers, make the numbers count upward from 0 on load, right? Something like that. I already have a baked version of this, but just going to kick this one off anyway. But basically what you end up with is something like this over here, and you'll see the numbers are starting from 0, or in this case 1 for these two. I probably want to do some more prompting. It's a one-shot prompt, and so I'm always impressed when those actually work and are able to do what I want them to. And actually, I'm just going to show it down here in the preview, basically, because I don't have the on load actually set correctly for this, but that's okay. I'm just going to show you here. You'll see now how this thing is basically counting upwards and doing that, right? So just with like a one prompt able to create that, which is really fast and it's nice. And what's also nice is I told it to try and be responsive about it. And so you can see it's actually adjusting positions of those things to the point where it added its own breakpoint for the mobile view down here. You can see that, right? You can see how in this case, and I would have to change the height of my objects, but basically like that's an interesting aspect of responsiveness with code components. If you ask the component, if you prompt it to be responsive, and you could tell it just particular breakpoints, you could tell it to just always try and fit on screen, things like that, your code components will adapt accordingly as well, which is really nice. It's really, really useful. And you can see that it's generating previews here. Couldn't tell you why those two previews are different, the 1% versus the 0%. So we'll have to come back to that. But otherwise, it's generating those previews live so you can actually see how they're going to look responsively inside your design. Okay, last one. And then we're going to move to some of the Q&A that we have. We got some other good questions that have come in so far. We're going to talk about one fun technique that I like to use a lot. I like putting shaders behind headers. Because it looks cool. It looks really cool. Yes, I realized Russell ran this into the ground, but I still like it and I want to use it. And so we're going to check it out. So here I have a code layer. In fact, what I did was I actually grabbed a shader that I really liked. There's a great website called shadertoy.com. If you go and check it out, you can browse all kinds of shaders. This one had a pretty cool effect. Really, really liked it. In fact, all I did was I copied the code for the shader, went back into Figma Design, told Figma Design to use this shader. I basically just said, implement this shader. And I just pasted all of the shader code immediately below that. And it found its own bug the first time through. I clicked fix, and then it was able to just generate the shader for me automatically on the page. So this is really useful. And then what you can do is you can place this, basically what I'm doing is I'm absolutely positioning this behind all of my content. So you can see here, we have an auto layout on this entire flow, but the shader itself is actually absolutely positioned, meaning that this is going to ignore the auto layout container, and instead it's going to respect the constraints that I set here. Clicking on this is really helpful because it's going to show you how the different constraints are set. In this case, we basically say 0 pixels from the top and always keep it centered. This is the centered option right here, you can see. You could also do left and right 0, but I like centered because centered on mobile means it's going to basically just try and keep it in the same place without squishing it or potentially changing its dimensions or anything like that too as well. So then when I play this, yeah, so cool. Really fun effect, really great way to quickly get some cool looking things in there too as well. So I would definitely check those out if you have some time. Yeah, fun stuff to look at. Cool. Okay, so that was a lot of great content that we have been through. Christine, thank you so much for walking us through all those examples. That was super helpful. And
Thank
we're going to
you.
go
I haven't
to,
seen those. They're
yeah,
very
isn't that
cool
cool?
what they
Yeah, kind of
showed.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
just
Anthony,
know
there's
that,
one
yeah.
little thing that I think some people got a bit confused with. They're like, "Where's dev mode, and how do we hand this off?" Maybe you
Oh,
just want
great
to
question.
point
And
out the publish
actually,
button.
yes. So we do have, once you've built out your site, there is a publish button up here where you can go and publish this. But I think that that actually ties back to one of the great Q&A questions we got. And I want to start there with some of our questions that we have, which is basically, I just lost my Zoom windows. Give me 1 second here. Q&A, there we go. Okay, so there was a great question just around when would I use Figma Design versus when would I use Figma Sites? And what's the difference here? And why am I going to be using one versus the other? And it's a fantastic question. Some of the use cases overlap and some of them are very unique. So the way I like to think about this is that Figma Design, and I kind of already mentioned this earlier, but Figma Design is kind of device or platform agnostic as far as what you're designing for, right? So Figma Design is very much um, allowing you to build, prototypes, to do all kinds of different things, and even to the point where it's things that are going to be difficult to implement on the web. And the web is a really common platform for a lot of the work that we do. And there was early ideas about how we wanted all of this to work, where it's like, oh, could this all be in one particular tool? And I think we kind of just found the pathway that we were leading ourselves on was that there's enough differentiation here that it really deserves its own space. There's a lot of other features we have not talked about today. There are things like CMS capabilities, additional settings, publishing, as Christine was mentioning a minute ago, where I can just one-click publish and make this a live website. Um, Not this page. This page would be weird because it has all of our examples on it, but if I was actually building a real file, and all of those interaction types too that are very web specific. And so it made sense to create an environment where we could give users confidence that what they were designing and what they were creating was actually something that was going to publish well to the web, right? Everything that we do in Figma design, maybe we don't have full certainty how that's going to get developed, right? Figma Design also has the interesting case that we mentioned about dev mode, right? So you will not find dev mode here inside of Sites. Sites is really meant to be self-developing, or I don't know, we'll develop it will develop and publish it for you automatically. As soon as you hit that preview button, that's showing you rendered HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? And so the advantage of using Sites is just you get that nice clarity on what it is that you're trying to build, which is I want to build a website. Whereas if I am working with a larger development team, and let's say we have a very large code base and a very big code stack when it comes to the tooling, how we manage state control, how we manage all of these types of things that are going to need a lot of developer input and then also developer feedback. That's where Figma design and dev mode, I think, really come into play. Because in that case, we're not necessarily trying to build the final product right inside of Figma. We're actually trying to build the understanding and the decision-making pathways between our design teams, our development teams, other stakeholders. It's, as far as rapid iterating and rapid prototyping, it's a fantastic space for that too as well. I have seen teams use Sites for prototyping as well. It can be really useful to just be like, hey, pull up this URL on your phone. But yeah, that's kind of the way that I like to think about the differences between the two. How are we doing on time? Okay, we might go a couple minutes over, but let's get through a few more of these questions that we've got here too as well. Um, and also, we also have a couple of folks from the Figma team on the call with us today. We've got Adam Lehman and Katie Reed with us, who are going to help, I think, maybe answer some of these questions too as well. Adam, are you with us? Are you
Oh, I'm
are you
here.
in the room with us? Okay, great, cool.
Hello.
Maybe you can help with this first one here on will Figma sites be available on student license one day?
Yes. So that the short answer is yes. And the timeline that I could probably share is it's within days, not weeks. But I think if I say anything more than that, I'll probably get in trouble. But yeah, it's our intent to bring sites not just to EDU, but also to Starter.
Great. Oh, that's awesome. That'd be really fun.
Nice.
Can we share the Moonblock links again? Yes, we absolutely can. We'll make sure that these get
Yes.
included in the email that goes out with the video as well, so that you all have those. Great. Um, what's the easiest way to get rid of superfluous frames? I seem to constantly suffer from frame bloat. It's a good question. I think one thing to do is to just sort of get familiar with, like, I'm going to say that the the short answer there, I think, is like practice to a degree, right? You start to sort of recognize patterns and sort of see what's necessary, what's not. It's also like it can take a fair amount of frames for auto layout to actually respond and work correctly, right? If you think about the fact that every frame especially in like say an auto layout stack, every single one of those frames has a very specific responsibility that it's trying to control. Probably the direction of its child elements and the padding and things like that for that particular set of objects. And so sometimes that's just as small as two. Maybe you've got two tags in a row or title, subtitle, all these types of things, and you're going to need additional frames. So, if you feel like it's bloated, I would just try, go through an exercise of trying to start deleting things and see what happens. But oftentimes you can start to recognize, like if two auto layouts have the same behavior wrapped right around each other, like it's usually a good time to start asking, like, oh, I wonder if I could simplify that. So cool. All right, I think we had a couple more questions. Looks like we've actually gotten through most of them. Thank you, Adam and Katie, for handling all the questions that we have here. Great. Otherwise, oh, actually, there's a really good question about side nav bars and bottom nav bars and left sidebars and like the classic layout of like 1/3, 2/3. That is absolutely possible. We actually cover it in the last live stream. So what you would do there is basically you're going to be setting one area to being fixed, and the other area is going to have scrolling on its own container. For the sake of time, I might not show an example right now, but if you go and watch the previous webinar, you will see it. So there's a good one right there. Now, Adam, I believe we also have some things that are coming soon for sites, and would love for you to maybe share a little bit of information about what's on the docket.
Okay. So, sites is very much in beta, and we mean that when we say that it's a beta. But what do we actually mean by that term? One, you can use sites today to publish websites. We've got a hosting platform that's scalable. It's all great. When we say beta, we largely mean that it's just missing a lot of features that we would consider required for like a 1.0. And so that kind of impacts then the types of things you can build or the types of scenarios. So right now, Sites is extremely good at high design static websites. So I think the example we see a ton is lots of people making design portfolio sites and publishing like personal portfolios. Really good at that, and especially when you want to get into like the big interactions and the stuff that you can kind of unlock there in the full design canvas. But we're still missing a lot of bigger pieces. So coming soon is like the CMS piece, which will make these sites a lot more dynamic, or also the ability that you can like hand off the content management to somebody else, so that as a designer, you don't have to be in the middle of every change for every time there's like a news announcement or something like that. So I think that's going to unlock a whole bunch of different scenarios. You can imagine like blogs and event pages, stuff like that, where there's just like a lot of content churn. But we also had a long list of things that were missing from sites that we heard loud and clear from config. Some things were like custom fonts. Some things were like video fills, which we delivered earlier this summer. We also been working on the ability to include a native cookie banner, so that you're compliant with like GDPR and all those things, especially in Europe, where you need to have all your legal stuff in order. What else we've got? We've been working on a whole bunch of refactoring on how links work. A lot of links work today in the same way that they worked in the prototyping and interactivity panels or prototyping side from design, but we wanted to modernize some of that stuff and make it a little bit more central since links are so important onto the web. I'm going to draw a blank here on all the different things.
I think we've also got some password protections coming too as well, right? Is that right?
Yes. So we quietly released the ability to password protect your entire site or your entire make. Our hosting platform is basically the same. So if you want to like build something, but you want to share it with somebody, but like not sort of open it up to the entire web, you can put a password on it. We do want to bring that down to page level as well, because that's a pretty common scenario as well. It's like, hey, my site's open, but only these pages should be behind the password. So that's kind of coming soon.
Awesome.
And anyway, all that stuff is in the oven right now, and I think it'll be coming out of the oven very, very soon.
We're cooking.
Yeah.
We'll have some new stuff for you soon. So, Adam, thank you so much. That was great. Great. Okay, so I've got just a couple of last minute things here that I wanted to make sure that we cover. So first of all, if you're looking for some inspiration or some cool ideas, definitely check out figma.com/gallery. You can see both make examples and site examples here. I have this filter to some sites. There's some very cool ones to check out. Also, Christine, thank you so much. This has been
Thank
incredible.
you.
I also just wanted to plug Moonblocks one more time here, just so that we've got that. And go check out that free template because it's great. And it's a really great tool for doing some of that library work that we were showing a bit earlier today too as well. If you haven't, I would also go and watch Christine's config talk. It's
Thank
fantastic. It's
you.
really
I didn't
good.
know you were going to put that in here. Thanks.
And lastly, if you are just trying to get your hands on auto layout right now, please go watch this incredible video. This is from Lauren, another one of our designer advocates. It is from 0 to 1 on auto layout. Tons of great tips. I would go check it out. And with that, thank you. Please check out our future live streams at figma.com/events. If you have any suggestions or ideas on what we should do, let us know and we will get back to you. To any of the questions in the Q&A that we were not able to get to, we'll try and, if you want to follow up with us on social media, that's probably going to be the best way to get answers for this. And myself, Christine, others will try and help jump in and help out. So thank you all and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much.